Happy Thanksgiving Monday, October 14th. I'm Joey, only Caribbean weather dude, looking at a pretty rainy week here in BC. Let's have a look at all the details today on the Bad News Show. I am Joe. Let's go! There it is. This is bad news. My God.
Falling out right now.
Anything could happen. Get on! Wow. I'll watch the video later. Ain't dry mopping this. This forecast of the province of British Columbia is brought to you by Wildfires, Floods, and Chaos Communications Podcast. A brand new episode right now up there called Avoiding Panic. Do check it out. I think this episode's mostly about earthquake preparedness and tsunamis and things like that, but they do talk about everything on this channel. Tim Conrad and his crew are often working as information officers during crisis here in British Columbia. Excellent podcast, and gonna really miss having them as a sponsor on the channel. So thanks so much for all your help and support there, Tim. It's meant a lot to me. Okay, let's get on with the Bad News Show. Go to communicationspodcast.ca. Let's go. Here's a look at some of the weather stories going on in Canada right now. Nothing too crazy, actually. A little bit of air quality statement. So there's actually must be some smoke persisting, some wildfire smoke going on up there. So as unbelievable as it seems, some of these fires down by the Yukon border seem to be giving a little bit of smoke around Northwest Territories. Unbelievable. It's October 14th today, and there's wildfire smoke in the Northwest friggin' Territories. And you're trying to tell me that nothing wrong is going on. Okay. Probably Revelstoke and Golden as well. So some of that stretch down there. Highway 1 seen a bit of smoke, fog this morning. Areas of Revelstoke and Golden. Areas of dense fog have formed over West and East Columbia regions. That should dissipate earlier today. We got still frost advisories, I believe, down here in southern Ontario. Yes, that's the case. So temperatures have dipped and down there pretty good. Winter travel advisory in effect. Snow expecting to beginning late Monday and continuing Wednesday morning at Barriere, Quebec, and Macy. 10 centimeters could even fall up in those. There's some really large mountains there, actually. If you're ever going into Quebec City and you look over and you're like, man, people tell you that Vancouver's the prettiest city in Canada, and you're like, man, have you been to Quebec City? It's friggin' beautiful. Warnings that are related to some of our stormy weather we saw that was headed up towards. If you looked at the last forecast video we had here, we're talking about how the remnants of a lot of that tropical energy was coming up and around, looping back into Canada. The front face of it sort of heading towards Europe, right? But then some of it lurching back and around, and we're seeing that today with wind warnings at 90 kilometers per hour at Anticosti. I don't know what a Costi is, but they're against it there. Plateau, Nova Scotia, seeing Les Sweat. Wind warnings 90 kilometers an hour there. If you go down to looks like the south end of New Brunswick there, St. John and whatnot, 40 to 60 mils happening there, higher amounts. So we got rainfall and wind warnings happening up along Gaspésie and into the St. Lawrence area, and then up in the mountains again here. We got also winter travel advisory for 5 to 10 centimeters in some of these mountainous areas there to near Set Eels, but Set Eels itself is getting 30 to 50 millimeters of rain, 70 to 90 kilometer an hour winds. So bam. Just looking at where we think temperature is going to be above and below normal now for the next month, going into mid-October through into mid-November, right? So maybe along the Great Lakes through Superior and Huron and Michigan, you're going to see a little bit warmer temperatures. The Arctic still looking at warmer than average temperatures. That includes northern Quebec, whereas looking cooler and cooler for northern BC and southern Yukon, right? And that seems to be symptomatic of what you would call the La Nina pattern we are coming into. And that's what the weather today is very much symptomatic of. In fact, it's raining hard enough in BC and has been that we do have some high stream flow advisories that are up along the coast, Central Coast high stream flow advisories. Nothing too crazy, of course. Skeena, high stream flow advisories. And then we got these oranges here, flood watches. So there is some flood watches for Camano River, Powerhouse Trail Race. And if you go to this guy here, which is near Prince Rupert, same thing, the Kitimat River. So things to watch out for with this heavy rain. Northern tip of Vancouver Island even getting some pretty heavy rain, so we could see some pretty high stream flows, which all that means is there's going to be a better chance that the water is going to be rushing a little faster than usual. If you're playing near the edge, be very careful. Having riverbanks and things like that wash away that you might be standing on the edge of are always a problem as well, right? So high pressure dominating middle of Canada, low pressure on either coast. So we're talking about that little bit of an omega block, not a proper one necessarily, but sort of gives you that visual, right? The high pressure has that Big bulge in the middle, sitting over in the middle of Canada, right? Cold front moving through BC today. The low that's been slapping up against the coast, it's trying to reform itself. It's trying to get itself inland somehow. So it's got to go through this transition now from being a ocean-based low-pressure system to an inland-based low-pressure system. It's struggling to break through the mountains. That's what often happens here. And it's going to spend some time this week doing that, and it's going to send some bulbs of low pressure over the mountains when it does so. Okay, no big deal. For the most part, though, if you're in the middle of Canada, I mean, maybe you're seeing a little bit clearer skies than we're going to be seeing here in BC for the next little while. So that depends on maybe your exact location. Of course, it's about 10 a.m. as I'm recording right now. As you can see, that atmospheric river flow more or less still going up into now hitting Vancouver Island. It's coming over and getting us in the Caribou as well, some of this moisture. Although, of course, what we experience inland is never exactly what they experience on the coast. And people were saying, hey, isn't this just a Pineapple Express? Well, yeah, exactly. You know, the scientific word that we've come up with since the early 90s, it was in discussion for a long time and then was finally adopted formally in the late 90s. Atmospheric river being the word. There's 5 categories of atmospheric rivers. Categories 1, 2, and even low end 3 are very normal delivery systems for weather in BC coast, right? This is very much how the North Pacific likes to operate. I don't tend to use the words Pineapple Express as much until it's definitely coming from more of a Hawaii place, but you could argue that this kind of is nonetheless. So because we got that sunlight just rising still and heading over, we're not getting a pure view, so we'll just go to blue mode here so we get a better view of the clouds themselves and zoom in. There's our high pressure block out there in the Pacific Ocean. It tends to live somewhere off the California coast. Earlier it was a little bit higher, but now it's sunk right down low. And that's helping get this low pressure system that's sitting up there. It's obviously weakening itself down to 985. So that's from 2 days ago, it was at 961. So it's weakening and weakening, but still it's helping be a delivery system to send a lot of this in. High pressure is helping feed as high pressure goes clockwise. And you have this guy going counterclockwise. The two of them together are combining to give us a nice steady feed of precipitation in the province, and that's going to last for quite a while. And it is what it is. It's pouring here in real wells right now. Rather gross, rather ugly. If you're in the prairies, pretty nice. The further you get east, the nastier it gets. There's our storm, more or less sitting there off the coast now, pulling up a whole bunch of precipitation into the United States northeast as well as the Canadian maritime provinces. Let's just have a look at the conditions here in Wells. This is brought to you by Diggy's Diner here. They're the ones who've helped me rebuild my weather station that I have here, and now it's officially working fully. I haven't set up the new weather station. What I've done was I've taken the parts from the new one and put them on the old one for now, because I figure, well, if the old one's going to be sitting out there winter, it's going to take some beating. Maybe I'll save the good one and we'll use the old one for now. So that's kind of what I'm doing. But thank you, Diggy's Diner. If you're in Wells, go check out Diggy's. That's where I get my lunch often when I have time. So looking at Wells weather right now on my own station, here's what I want to show you that's very interesting, and that's how much temperature has come down. We had this bulge of temperature this morning at about 3:04 a.m. We were reading up over 14 degrees, and I'm at 3,135 feet above sea level. It came back down a little bit before 6 a.m., popped back up to 13.6, and now is steadily making its way down as temperatures cool down. That will be the story for the rest of the week, but I thought that was very, very interesting to see the temperature go that high in the middle of the night. I was quite surprised to see that. Very interesting indeed. So we are sitting right now at 8.6 in Wells, and it's raining hard, 2.5 millimeters per hour. So it's coming down very good. Looks like about 2 mils. You can see our pressure coming down as well. We've dropped 2 hectopascals in the last little bit, and our wind speed's up to 14.9. We had a gust of almost 20 kilometers going on this morning as well. So that's just a little bit. That gust would be with the last bout of rain coming in. You can see if we look at precipitation, the precipitation really kind of kicked in this morning. Yeah, at 7:30 or so, right? So people are asking me to look at the jet stream a little longer and say more about it, so we can take another minute to do that here. There's our big storm out in the East Coast, man. Totally nasty. A lot of that, as I said before, was some of the remnants and energy that came out of Hurricane Milton, looping back around towards feeding into the Canadian Atlantic provinces, also challenging Europe at the same time, right? Here's another thing we got going on. We're going to stop this for a second and go a little slower through this. So as you can see, we had the big ridge allowing the warmth in. Alberta's going to be the beneficiary of that next, while Ontario's still sitting in colder weather. Same with Quebec. They're getting, obviously, they're on the north side of the jet stream, so that's generally the weather divide. If you're on the north side, that's going to be cooler. If you're on the south side, it's going to be warmer. So right now, BC has been benefiting from that, but then by Monday, that moves over into the Alberta province and over to Saskatchewan. They start seeing a little bit of that warmer weather. Lucky for them. Whereas here in BC by Tuesday, we are looking really in the jet stream territory here. Going to be taking it on the chin a little bit. So going to be quite a bit of rain coming through. It looks like especially Tuesday, I would suggest. And then we find ourselves on that north end of that jet stream. And I think that, with the exception of southern Manitoba for a little bit there on Wednesday, I think most of Canada is now going to be struggling in that cooler weather at this juncture of October. A couple interesting things are going to come up here in a second as we go through the graphic. And here is the one. So look at this big trough coming down now in the American West. I'm going to be really interested to see what that does as that moves across. This is a very typical looking outbreak for severe weather through the United States, through the Midwest and whatnot. We often see our tornado stories look much like this. Interesting, we got a little bit of a storm down there close to where we've had some of that hurricane formation. We are a little bit paying attention to a couple spots out there that have a risk of producing another tropical storm. It seems like things calmed down a little bit after Milton. We were in a bit of a pattern there where the tropical storms were forming into hurricanes fast, and one after another were coming. So there is our big sort of storm setup, our big upper level low sitting down there in the United States. So that should be pummeling probably snow and rain and a bunch of garbage into the American Midwest before it moves on. And we'll have a better look at it here on earth.nullschool.net. And what this is, it's 250 millibars, so we're just looking at 500. We're going to go a little higher up now and see what those jets are. So you can see BC, right now southern BC, still sitting a little bit nice for a little bit longer. But here's our big storm in the Pacific. It's feeding hard up, sending this jet stream hard into, looks like straight up into the Northwest Territories. Here in southern BC, not going to last much longer for us at all. So that is our concerning situation. And look at these strong jets coming off of the east coast of Canada and blasting over across the ocean. And where it develops a split flow, some pushing down to Africa, some slamming upwards towards the United Kingdom. British Columbia getting dumped on today. Graphic doesn't quite give justice to what we're actually seeing here in Wells. In fact, what are we seeing here right now? Although this is updated at 9:58 a.m., this will change probably by the time this video gets out. So this isn't going to give you a very good idea because, radar images change all the time. That's what they do. But we'll have a look through. Of course, we're only seeing what's in the Prince George radar zone right now. Very solid looking rain going on, especially if you go down to the Caribou. Here in Wells right now, we are just getting drenched. And here's this line. Looks like the heaviest rains have not even hit us yet here. So pounding rain, but we're definitely getting the worst of it, maybe a little bit down through Williams Lake and whatnot. But we're taking it pretty nice today. So I don't know if this graphic fully illustrates that, and that's what you have to sort of look at, the difference between what you see on a model and what becomes reality, right? And modeling is very, very helpful for us to kind of get a picture of what things may be. Looks closer to what we're seeing right now in some of these images by the time you get to Tuesday, right? Monday, lingering Caribou, North Caribou, Prince George regions and whatnot, lingering. Now you go down the south coast, rain through coast mountains during the day there, Tuesday, up into the north, big snow still, like we were suggesting. Earlier in the video, I said Tuesday. Maybe I meant more Tuesday-ish, Wednesday. But anyway, you get the picture. Chance of snow, I would say, for those places down south like Whistler, Pemberton, Mount Currie, things like that, up the coast mountains. Definitely looks like one of those times you don't want to be just driving down into Bella Coola if you don't have skill or tires or things like that. Heavy precipitation, south coast mountains, precipitation through Columbias and Kootenays, a little bit of snow up there you might run into if you're going through Rogers Pass and things like that. Northern BC being the place that most of the snow will be coming through this week and Wednesday, so up through Spitzisi Plateau, through the Omanika, transition of rain somewhere down near Williston Lake. As we go into Wednesday, later in the day, larger precipitation totals in the Caribou Mountains, larger precipitation totals in southern BC, some fairly good snowfall. So we'll be kind of looking for Wednesday, Thursday to see if there'll be weather statements, special weather statements, watches, and things like that. And warnings That would be the days you circle in the calendar. Wednesday, Thursday, especially, is going to be kind of gray and miserable for a lot of us until that point. But some of us will get rain like I'm seeing right now, and some of you will have to wait a little while longer. But everyone's going to get some precipitation come through the province. That's the good news, right? Unfortunately, some of that will be snow. Most of that snow will probably be for higher elevations. But if you are coming into overnight times, I would think that some of that snow is quite likely to show up at lower elevations. And then you can see we got all blue lines here, all blue lines. That means we're getting down below zero at night. That's what those blue lines are telling me before we see a bit of a warm up coming by next weekend. But that comes with another wallop of weather. So this is the pattern we're in right now. It continues next weekend, looking to be just continuing to be wet and crappy. So we'll just take a minute and play through the week a little bit and see what goes on. So we got that high pressure really dominating a lot of central Canada. Right, low off the coast here, feeding in like we've been seeing. Warm temperatures still down. You go down south, they've had a lot of record-breaking temperatures in California. 35s down there, and you think like, oh, it's warm in Arizona, and it's warm in it's not necessarily 35 degrees warm at this time of year all the time. It doesn't mean it's out of the question, but they've had record-breaking temperatures down there, right? That's the larger point. Today at 4 o'clock, seeing not that nice temperatures now in the BC interior, but some of you still seeing maybe 13s if you're down in the low middles. And at the same time, we got winds coming through at times. Nothing all that crazy, but wind gusts, especially if you're in the Rocky Mountains, you could be seeing some gusts up in the 40s and 60s as well. Looks like the piece is going to be a little bit gusty today, and I think that's going to continue on as this system sort of pounds in. Expect periods of windiness, mainly calm in the interior. Kamloops getting a little bit of a breeze out of the east at 13 degrees there, though, so they're not complaining too much at this time of the morning at 10 a.m. to see 13. We got a ship out there off Haida Gwaii getting 40s and some 40s down there. Another ship, that's a personal station, that's off the coast right now. So there's winds out there. Some 18s in northern up at Dease Lake, some 32s on the Alaska side. So gusty, but nothing's going to knock your house down or nothing, of course, right? So there's our precipitation there in the Cariboo today, mostly up along the coast. We'll fast forward up to midnight tonight, more or less. See our temperatures below zero, mostly still in the far north. We're just going to zoop through this week and see how that spreads out by Wednesday midnight. Most of BC hitting freezing temperatures. Very cold in the Yukon by that point. You see some definitely minus 20 showing up for the first time in the Mackenzies. Before we get that little bit of a warm up I was showing in BC, that comes into the weekend. But there's your first time we've seen in continental Canada that I've noticed so far this year, minus 20. So that's very interesting, right? Days will be obviously somewhat nicer, but we're getting down to those lower temperatures at night. We'll have a look at our rain and thunder by Tuesday afternoon. More southern BC possible. So that was a GFS model we looked at last time. And now we're looking at an ECMWF model, so different computer modeling. But they both give us more or less the same sort of picture that precipitation is moving through southern BC. They can kind of squabble as to who gets exactly how much and where. That's not generally my game. How I like to forecast weather. I like to forecast what is the weather doing, right, as opposed to what are you exactly experiencing in this specific reference point. But nonetheless, sometimes we do. It looks like as you go overnight Tuesday, going to be seeing snow in the coast mountains, going to be seeing some precipitation down in the Columbias. Looks like Vancouver Island getting hit pretty good. Seems like some nice winds coming from the southerlies there. So that is certainly what we'll be seeing as transition in northern BC on Wednesday. Get nastier, southern BC get nastier. You might see a few flashes of lightning in maybe the North Thompson or Cariboo or things like that. We've been getting that from time to time in some of those areas in the Wells Gray Park. Why can't I think of Wells Gray Park's name when I live in Wells, BC? That seems absolutely ridiculous. That moving through as you get into Wednesday night, more and more snow. Everything that is falling is mostly falling as snow by that point. Thursday morning, going to be a mess on Thursday. Could be snow by noon happening. So even in noon, if you're traveling anywhere on Thursday, going through mountain passes and things like that, be aware. Check drivebc.ca. Thursday being a day that I think we're going to see probably our nastiest amount of snow that we're going to see. And then we got that next storm coming in. It's going to be next forecast topic, I think, more or less. 979 low, central low pressure at 979 hectopascals. So not going to be near as deep as the last one, but as we come into Friday, definitely giving us that same blast, same thing as we've been seeing. We got the long tail, we got a low-level atmospheric river, low-level Pineapple Express. You could call it. It's more or less coming from Hawaii. I like to call it the Pineapple Express when it's coming from Hawaii because I think, to me, that gives a real... So I still do use the term sometimes, even though maybe a lot of meteorologists don't. So Friday we could be seeing really pounding rain. That 37 millimeters falling in 3 hours on the west coast of Vancouver Island. That's concerning. So that's some maybe flood conditions we'll be having to watch out for this weekend. Could see freezing rain north of Prince George. So there you're driving overnight from Friday. You're going to hit that transition mix if you are making plans to be traveling Friday night through there, and you're going up from Fort Nelson up through Watson Lake especially. We're seeing a lot of snow up there, a lot of snow up the Dempster Highway as well, a lot of snow through the Rockies, a lot of snow in the Columbias. So we're looking at this weekend being a larger event for precipitation, larger event for heavy rainfall directed at the coast, at the south coast, I should say, at the inhabited parts of BC. So we've been talking about some of this kind of stuff that, we've had a bunch of atmospheric rivers, and people love to watch the video when that says atmospheric river in the titling. I totally get that. It's a sexy name. But most atmospheric river events here in BC are, especially if they just keep moving down the coast, sliding on down, most of our atmospheric river events in BC are not that exciting, right? They're pretty typical. So we might see a stronger one hitting an area that's more populated, I think, by the weekend. But that's a little far out. Prepare yourselves for the fact that we're just not going to be getting much for awesome weather this week in general. Our very last look we're going to have here is we're just going to look at rainfall accumulation this week, and we can pick the most likely place to have the biggest number, because that's what you want to see is the biggest number. Tuesday night, falling hard. Seems like everywhere in BC gets some of this, right? The central interior up to the, maybe a little less. Maybe Williams Lake getting the least, but this is a forecast for some pretty solid rains. If we would bounce to the end of the month, well, not the end of the month, but the 23rd, have a look at that coastal section of Vancouver Island. Heavy rain, 364. That's a little bit more than just your average Pacific weather system, right? And it's going to bring a lot of snow this week. We're going to see snowfall happen in quite a few locations. Seems like everyone at some point, unless you're in these lower valleys where everyone lives, more or less, but everyone who's driving through BC has a risk at some point. If you're just driving all day nonstop every day, you are going to run into snow no matter what in BC this week, right? Everyone's going to see a little bit in the hills near them. Everyone's going to see a little bit on the mountain passes, some of these stretches. Gold and Revelstoke, 34 centimeters could fall up there. Okay, well, that's exciting, right? That's definitely some winter-looking snow. Could see up to 1 meter in the Caribou Mountains in the next 10 days. So these numbers will change a lot. Don't get too alarmed. But if it says 150 in the Coast Mountains for snow here, could I believe 100? Yeah. Could I believe 200? Yeah. I mean, these things will have time to change. We could have a better or a worse forecast still yet. So all of you in southern BC going to be getting finally that precipitation you've been needing. It's definitely been very, very dry down there. I know. It's been very dry, and you need it really bad. I need a new sponsor for the channel right now. So if you want to advertise your business, and if it meets my specifications for what I believe in and what I'm willing to promote, right? So one of the reasons I'm promoting communicationspodcast.ca is it's been a good deal for me, but also because I really support the show that he's trying to make. I support the product he's putting out. So that is an important thing if you want. But also, every time you share and like and even subscribe, you're helping me with the algorithms. You're getting me to a place where this channel is becoming more and more successful. I appreciate that. Every channel member who puts in $1. We just hit 5,000 subscribers yesterday. 5,000 on the channel now. So this is happening. So I'm putting out all kinds of videos this week to sort of thank everybody. So watch for noon hours the next bunch of days. You're going to see some wildfire footage from this summer. Nothing maybe too dramatic, but the story nonetheless. I was out working a fire somewhere else when my whole town got evacuated. I couldn't go home when coming back from my fire. So, no, I definitely have some stories to tell about this summer. It was a good one. Okay, well, that's the show for today. Okay, bye, everyone. Take care. Happy Thanksgiving.